Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Coach's Corner. The gang's all here except Tony. I got Bam, Ramses, and myself. And today we're going to be talking about Yoshi. So Yoshi's an interesting character, especially we're about like 4 or 5 years into the game, and the character is the most relevant it's ever been at top level than we've ever seen. And Yoshi is usually an early meta character, and it was the case in Smash 4. In Brawl Yoshi, I actually don't know too much about Brawl Yoshi, but to my understanding, Brawl Yoshi was just not the greatest. And then Melee, it's weird because Yoshi is, really relevant in Melee because of Amsa. And then I don't know too much about 64 Yoshi. But I do know a good amount about Smash 4 Yoshi, and I will say Smash 4 Yoshi was pretty solid, and then DLC came out. That's like the TLDR for Smash 4 Yoshi. Do any of you guys know too much about Brawl Yoshi at all?
Yeah, I don't really know too much about Brawl Yoshi, but yeah.
We had a few local Brawl Yoshis in my scene, and so I play Falco. That matchup was not fun. And I imagine Meta Knight Tornado. So like any character that's too aerial based in Brawl just lost to Tornado, right?
Right.
So the only good characters in that game were characters that had a functioning ground game, like Snake and Olimar and Diddy and even Marth. So Olimar, kind of in the same spot as Smash 4, where he was really solid, but then like the top tiers kind of shut him down really hard.
Oh, actually, I have seen 64 Yoshi because of Wizrobe. Wizrobe plays 64 Yoshi,
true.
and he does he does pretty well competitively with the character. So this character has always had some competitive viability in some games throughout the Smash series, but I would say overall throughout the Smash series has been considered very weak. I don't know if I can confidently say if Ultimate is Yoshi's best game, just because of how well Amsa does in Melee, which is just still mind blowing to this day. It's just crazy that he's able to get the results that he does with Yoshi. So let's go into Ultimate Yoshi. So Ultimate Yoshi is very interesting. Right now we have Yoshidora doing very well in Japan, and as of recently, Meme doing extremely well at Smash Factor. So, man, it's interesting because I've studied Meme, because when I used to coach Tweak, he was actually one of his matches, and Tweak got extremely lucky versus Meme because this is back when Tweak played Wario against Yoshi, and this was the Genesis before quarantine. So I don't know exactly what year that is. I'm assuming like 2019, no, 2020, something like that. Right before quarantine, he fights Meme, and then game 4, Meme should have won, but there was some weird thing where Meme went for a jab lock, and the jab lock actually didn't lock him. And I to this day, I don't even know why that happened. I don't know. Like,
was it Pokemon Stadium?
I'm trying to think. I think it was
because I know. City. Oh, then I don't know. I know Pokemon Stadium had some like 1 pixel slant kind of thing going on.
Oh, really? It might have been Stadium. It might have been Stadium. I'm not too sure. I can't remember. But all I know is game 4.
That's tragic.
A lock misses, and he doesn't get the lock to forward smash, and that would have been game 5. So, yeah, incredible stuff. And the fact that happened, I had to study the footage just because, I mean, it was pretty deep in bracket as well. I think Meme got 16th or 17th, 16th, 9th, something around there at that Genesis. So, an amazing player, and just doing it with Yoshi was crazy back then. And even now, Meme has taken a very long break, but came out for Smash Factor and did extremely well. I think when I watched Meme's footage and studied it, the thing that impressed me the most is how he hurt box shift with up tilt, especially after back air. He'll do like things like falling back air shield pressure into buffer up tilt, and your grabs would whiff. So, and then he gets the backside of the up tilt, and it's like that's the perfect launcher, right? So, yeah, it generally feels like Yoshi's a toolbox character to me. You have a bunch of tools that are pretty solid. You have a pretty solid combo game. I actually think his combo game is above average as well.
Super underrated. Yeah.
Very
it's pretty
underrated.
wild, actually.
Yeah. So I don't know what your guys' general thoughts on Yoshi, but if you guys have never seen us do like a character breakdown, we usually kind of go through the history of the character throughout multiple games, kind of give as much insight as we can, and then go into Ultimate. So yeah, Bam, what is your general thoughts of Yoshi as a character?
Yeah, I mean, Yoshi is one of those characters where I always thought that character was like, if you're looking at from 4 and then Ultimate, like I thought the character was pretty solid. What you already alluded to already, like the combo game is really, really strong. And just having that, like, always this character is just zooms through the air, right? A lot of the crazy things for me was just kind of seeing also the interactions they get from Bear. The fact that they're able to combo like from like fast fall Bear, the fact that Bear like just straight out kills as well, and especially in a game like Ultimate where versus 4 you have actual better, they're more favorable interactions for like edge guarding and stuff, so like in that situation I felt that the character would be pretty solid, right? And Fair is really, really good, really good tool. Nair is insane. Obviously sets up a lot of situations too where you can get like with the down tilt, you can get those tech chases as well, which I think is amazing to get those kind of soft resets and then can get some conversions from there. And then just a straight up true combo game is like OD, and a lot of it are like they end up with vertical enders, right? So that's always going to be a plus, because that means that any point in time when you're looking for that kill option, like you can do that anywhere on screen, right? You don't have to drag someone close to the side blast zones or anything like that. So I think there's a lot of favorable things. I thought, like, of course, one of the biggest changes for this character, right? Is we know, like, back in the day this character used to just not be able to jump out of shield, just was jammed, right? And like,
I don't know why they did that.
I totally forgot
that,
about
but...
that. You're right. When was the change? It was from like Smash 4 is when Yoshi finally got to jump out of shield. So Brawl and before, Yoshi could not jump out of shield.
Yeah, which was hilarious. And so like, yeah, then it's like, so this character overnight just became like godlike with that kind of with the out of shield game, because like, again, Nair is really, really strong, Bear is really, really strong, and you can like drift in, drift out, whatever it may be. So yeah, the character does have a lot of standard tools that like you just look at and you're like, wow, these all look really, really good. Man, I wonder, this character should be just blowing up everybody, right? But then obviously there's going to be nuances with the double jump is going to be great to a certain extent, but there's a lot of characters with just big sweeping disjointed hitboxes that can do enough damage to knock Yoshi out of that double jump, right? And I think then you get in those kind of circumstances where this character is getting edge guarded a bit more than you like may expect, right? Even with that drift, it's just like there's so many characters just that have those big sweeping hitboxes in this game, right? These sorties. So I think that's problematic a lot of times for Yoshi. But yeah, it's interesting character. Just all around, I think it's pretty solid, strong. Their combo game's insane, like some of the best. And again, having that in with tech chases and vertical is just all around strong. So I don't think the character will not. The character will never not be relevant. So
for sure. I think the transition from 4 to Ultimate really did Yoshi well. Of course, like he wasn't bad in Smash 4, but funny thing, Yoshi had a 6-frame jump squat in Smash 4, which, if you guys remember, that is like on the higher end of the spectrum, right? Same for Wario, by the way. So like the unification of jump squat outside of Kazuya, because Kazuya, the unification of jump squat to 3 frames was really big for Yoshi as an aerial character. And of course, the decrease of landing lag across the board, huge for aerial characters, right? So we saw aerial gameplay in Smash 4, which wasn't bad, but mostly focused on, spacing and defensive play. Characters that could play more aggressively aerial wise, like Yoshi or Wario, who use the movement to confuse you. It just becomes a lot more viable because of the jump squat, because of the lower landing lag. So those 2 buffs really set Yoshi up to be positioned very well. I think something that Ben mentioned about like the double jump armor, what we saw in Smash 4 a lot as well, was when you had a bit of rage, you would just be able to knock Yoshi out of the double jump quite easily with whatever character you played, right? And in this game, because rage is way less of a factor, it's more of a matchup thing where like either you can do it or you cannot. Whereas in Smash 4, it felt like almost every character was able to do it. So combine all of that with the fact that, well, Yoshi has a pretty solid recovery, everything considered in Ultimate. pretty good weight. In Smash 4, you would get killed off of stray hits a lot, right? Like a limit cross slash, especially core and pin. Bayo combos a little bit less because of double jump armor, but overall, like witch time still blows you up. Ultimate, the survivability for Yoshi, insane. And I think Yoshi, like Charles said, very much like a toolbox character. I think Tony has said in the previous episode that, like, Joker, Aegis, they're like generalists, right? They're well-rounded characters, which means that you cannot jump into a game and try to like dominate it with what you're doing, like a Cloud Becker or Rob Nair. But it means that you're always going to have some sort of answers. And I think Yoshi, especially, definitely in that category. And what we always see is that these type of characters, they usually do better the more the game develops, because you get more used to the matchup. You know how to focus on countering the opponent's options. And Yoshi's not only a toolbox character, but also a close quarter combat character, which means that, like, again, and we've talked about this on the Kazuya episode, etc., like the close quarter combat type characters have come to their own in such a big way recently, right? Like
really
Steve in general, we see Ashimo and the Ryu, Mia with the Game & Watch, like all these characters, like people have figured out, okay, this engine is fucking crazy for defensive characters. As in, yeah, you can like short hop Becker with Cloud as much as you want, but eventually you need to open them up, right? And that opening up part, that is like, if you're wrong, you're taking a full combo. And that is where Yoshi just, dude, like Charles said, right? Like that late hit up tilt, that's like an easy like 50% in some situations, which Yoshidora especially has shown us. So Yoshi, I think, really like a late meta beneficiary, which you wouldn't normally say, because he seems such a simple character, because he is relatively straightforward, right? He doesn't have like crazy, weird, specific hitboxes or complex resources to manage. He's just a dude with a lot of air speed and a lot of combos. And but what we're seeing is like, Yoshis are learning the matchups. Yoshis are playing around that defensive tendency. And what we're seeing is just Yoshidora, especially, making such quick work of his opponents with those qualities. Something that I think is especially interesting in this game is kind of like the push and pull between, like, do you decide to rely on air mobility or do you decide to rely on ground mobility? And I think especially early on, we saw a lot of like reliance on aerials, right? Like early meta was just like Poly jump in there, Roy jump in there, Cloud jump Becker. Like all these early meta characters are very, very aerial. And I think Yoshi, especially early on, really struggled on that. But now that people have a better grip on, like, how to counter that and where the weaknesses in those types of strategies lie, Yoshi now has more room to be in the air, and we're really seeing like the full result of proper air baiting, which is something that like only a few characters can do, right? Like think Peach, Yoshi, Wario, Jigglypuff, something like that. Exactly. Yeah. So I think really like it's just a lot of meta developments coming together in just the right way, and then also like Yoshidora as like a huge force in Japan. It just kind of like coalesces into what we're seeing right now, which is just a lot of Yoshis. Like I think almost every big scene has like that Yoshi player,
Yeah.
And that really is a sign that the character, I think, succeeds at a lot of different levels.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I love that you brought up the idea, like, yes, the character's a generalist, has a toolbox character, but also close quarter to combat, right? Because like, and I think that's also what like helps those kind of characters, right? That kind of these late meta, like how we've seen the advancement of Fox, right? Because once you optimize those characters' combo games, they transition very well into themselves. So it's like, okay, now I know that this is actually minus here if I do this, or if they delay fairly, from whatever character, right? Or it's like, all right, in this is kind of situation, I can actually punish this Mithra, right? And then you can kind of take that hit and put them into a tech chase. And then from the tech chase, you get a true combo. Next thing you know, they're done. Or next thing you know, you get them to the corner carry, get them off stage, and then like that's a wrap, right? So I think the character is so sick to watch personally too. I've always liked Yoshi in like on the ultimate variants, because I just like to see them. Like I like the combo game, and I think in this kind of meta, it's a treat to watch, right? Don't get it twisted. I'm not a fan of Yoshi overall. All right?
Okay.
I look Ramses, I'm like, wait, I'm not a traitor. Take it easy, all right? Okay.
Addendum, I don't actually like Yoshi.
Okay.
Yeah, playing against Yoshi could be really frustrating because the armor, how floaty Yoshi is as a character.
And how safe those aerials are, man. Like, you know what I mean? Right? Like very, very good. Even like the the kind of more disjointed ones too, right? And still falling between like -7 mana, 8 range, and then it's like then you have like up air on shield is insane, nair on shield is insane, right? So
Down
it's
air
like
on shields, just
yeah,
eats
down
it
air on
up.
shield, just like yeah, what up? Like just tap dancing, like
Oh,
it's just such a crazy character.
I do want to talk about some other base mechanic changes as well as some changes from Smash 4 to Ultimate, because I think Ultimate Yoshi is the most similar to Smash 4. Another base mechanic that actually helped Yoshi a lot is the fact that when you're grounded in Ultimate and you get hit by a spike, you cannot tech it. So in Smash 4, and this is why Cloud Up B out of shield is used in Ultimate, but it was not used in Smash 4, because in Smash 4 you could get hit by it on purpose, and even if you started on the ground, it didn't matter, because whenever you got spiked, whether you were grounded or whether you're in the air, you could tech it in Smash 4. So in Ultimate, if you don't know, if you're in the air and you get spiked down to the ground, you can tech it unless it's untechable. But if you're on the ground when the move starts, so even though Cloud Up B brings you up into the air and then brings you back down, the first hit, if you're grounded, you cannot tech it, right? So this is a very big deal in Ultimate because it gives Yoshi's a lot better confirms. So Yoshi could do forward air into up smash in Smash 4, but you could tech the forward air, right? So in this game, Yoshi can get the forward air. If you're on the ground, boom, right into up air, right into up smash, right? And we've seen a ton of Yoshis use that confirm. So that made the character a lot more consistent. In Smash 4, you did get the little boost from up B. I think they increased the boost in Ultimate, so you could have it like multiple times, and the first one's a little bit bigger. And on top of that, if you double jump and then up B, you get an even bigger boost of mobility in the air. So we see a lot of Yoshis. It's like you can go really low and go for a directional air dodge mix, which a directional air dodge is another thing that helped Yoshi, because most floaty characters usually
Very
have
much.
really good directional air dodges. So that also helped out Yoshi's recovery, having a little bit more mix. And I mean, how many times have we seen Meme or Yoshidor off stage, and the last thing they have is a directional air dodge, and the opponent like missed times like that, 3-frame window that they can try to connect on their ledge grab there. So just a ton of stuff. And then because of the double jump up B thing, the way that egg works is you can double jump up B, and then it's almost like a Mario fireball or a Pikachu T-jolt, where you're kind of falling down with this projectile you set up with, and Yoshi has a ton of air mobility, right? So being able to weave in and out, or even combo off the egg, and we've seen the egg being used offensively as well. So this helps the both offense and defensive Yoshi. Another thing I want to explain for the viewers, just in case you didn't know, Yoshi has a very unique shield. So Yoshi is, I would say, generally a toolbox character, but he also has some very unique properties, being the armor and the shield. So I think we should explain both of those as well to the viewers, just in case they don't know all the logistics of that. So Yoshi's shield is the only shield in the game that cannot be shield poked. If you notice, Yoshi's shield does not shrink. So his body is none of his hurt box is ever exposed. And then it'll just go to full shield to break, and then just changes colors, right? So a very great shield that I think in terms of game development, that's why the developers didn't want to give Yoshi the option to jump out of shield. Maybe they thought that was a little too strong. In Smash 4, they said, fuck it, and they just gave it to him. And another thing that's great about Yoshi's shield is the aerials, right, that go along with it. Nair hits very low and it comes out very quick. So it is very difficult to cross up Yoshi's shield. Just the shield pressure Yoshi in general. I mean, when you think about Yoshi's shield, it's one of the stronger shields in the game, because you have a frame 6 option, because the Nair is frame 3. So you have a frame 6 option out of shield, one frame faster than Cloud's up B. So think about that. So very quick out of shield, and it hits very low to the ground. So you can cover cross-ups really well. So incredible. And you can set up tech chases. So Yoshi's can do a Nair out of shield and drift towards the direction you're going to get hit, and then tech chase you from there. Extremely, extremely powerful. And then the armor, it comes out on frame 1 of the double jump. So you have a frame 1 option, and the way the armor works, the lower, I could be wrong on this, I'm not an ultra expert on the Yoshi armor, but the lower percent you are, the bigger threshold, and essentially it just minuses X knockback. So it's a set amount of knockback that it minuses from the move you're getting hit. And if the move that you got hit by does not exceed that threshold, then won't get put into tumble. But if you've ever seen Yoshi get hit by a really strong move in disadvantage, and all they do is like do a little flinch, like they should be sent to the blast zone, but it's like, that's it, because it subtracted X amount of knockback from the move. And once it exceeds X, it's still going to minus that amount of knockback. So then you'll see really weird interactions. And then the higher percent you are, the less knockback that is, to my understanding. So just a general breakdown of all of Yoshi's unique mechanics in the game and how they've changed throughout the game, and even the base game changes, right? And Bam mentioned tech chasing being such a big deal in Ultimate, and Yoshi's standard grounded poke being down tilt sets up these tech chases, and he has an incredible jab block that can get followed up, and from that jab block he can get the forward smash. And fun fact, forward smash is only active for 1 frame, so generally you don't see forward smash used in neutral from Yoshi, but it's more of like, this move hits really hard, so I'm going to only do it off of the jab block, right? And you can also do jab block down smash to set up for tech or like offstage interactions, just for that nasty angle, right, that it'll send. So you have a ton of options, and even there's nair out of shield and up air out of shield can also get cross-ups behind, and we'll get the KO, right? So there's a lot of just great tools in general. And one thing that I think is a very interesting topic that this will also go into Yoshi's repertoire is like a very unique thing to Yoshi, or like it's a handful of characters, but Ramses mentioned what I want to call it, air-whiffing, like just whiffing aerials in neutral, just whiff punishing, whiff punishing aerials in neutral. And I think that topic's really interesting because there's very few characters that can do that, like Wario, like Yoshi, like Jigglypuff, that have really good air acceleration. So there's 2 main like
they can air shimmy. It's crazy.
Yeah, air shimmy. That's a great way to put it.
That's it. Yeah.
So there's 2 main air stats in Ultimate. There's air acceleration and there's air speed. So max air speed is when it takes time for your character to accelerate, essentially, right? So there's some characters with incredible max air speed, but they don't have good acceleration. So acceleration is when you're in the air and then you go right and then you go left. And then it's like, how fast are you getting to your air acceleration without actually burning a resource to do it? So there are resources that can change this. Things like double jumping. If you are drifting to the left and then you double jump right, you are automatically at max airspeed, right? Or like dash or jumping after a dash, you're putting yourself into essentially max airspeed right off the rip, right? But there's conditions that have to be made. And usually they put these things on floatier characters because they're just in the air longer, so they can utilize the air acceleration and their max airspeed. So just general things to think about. And there's very few characters that have this, and Yoshi's one of them. And I just also think it's interesting that we see Yoshi doing well and then Gluto winning like these really fucking hard matchups by doing this air whiffing strategy.
Yeah, man. It's just so strong, right? Like the ability, because I think just in general, right, we have in this game, like obviously we do have, we have dash back that's already really strong. And it's like for these characters to be able to do that with these aerials, and like not only do that with these aerials, but because they're already airborne, now you have all these quick like aerials that you have already. So even if someone's like, oh, you see someone shielding, right, afterwards, you can just drift back in, and that's still a benefit for you because now you're hitting people with -3 aerials, potential cross-ups, all these kind of things. So it's a really, really powerful tool because, as always in a lot of these games, the aerials are just like aerials are really, really strong ultimately because of just the lower overall like landing lag, right? And then we have like in what they tend to be on shield. But when you're already airborne, it's like, okay, that's great. Usually the problem is you can't reactively do that to someone and drift in and punish them, but these characters can. So it's just being able to do that with punish, and also regardless, even if someone is like being defensive and they're being safe, you can still utilize that time, even if the shield is up, to actually just straight up just shield pressure them, so to speak, which is pretty incredible. And yeah, I remember the first time I started seeing Gluto like just kind of tied that into his game even more. Like he's always had that kind of standard like air shimmy game, but it just felt like he got to a point where he just like, dude, okay, I got to take this to the next level. And that's really like, especially when he was like, all right, I of course at the end of the day, Waft is always going to be godlike, and I need to be able to find those. But if I cannot find those, how am I opening up people on these harder matchups? What am I looking at? And just being able to play with those characters, like with people's like reactions and stuff, that is so damn good. And like we see that from all these Yoshis. Like we see that from Yoshidora, right? Being able to really play that consistent like neutral there, right? So it's like I always love that because like it's twofold, right? Both for the whiff punishing side and both for the overall pressure, because you can simply react to something, and if you want to just drift in and pressure their shield, you still can too.
I totally agree, dude. And I think something especially about like the air shimmying is like it only really becomes powerful once you understand the situations, right? And I think that is something that again it comes with time. And so like early on, like if you look at early meta Gluto was good early in Ultimate. Don't get me wrong, he's an amazing player, but he didn't really rely on repositioning in the air as much as he relied on just like the brute force of airspeed to rush someone down or evade someone. And now that we're seeing more knowledge on like, okay, this is the position I want to be, the airspeed, the flexibility that the airspeed or the acceleration gives becomes that much more valuable. And I think so when I talk to my students, I often tell them, well, when you're thinking about like ground versus air movement, generally air movement is a little bit more committal because you cannot move as far in the air. But you get access to landing aerials, which is amazing. You get an aerial, like a move without lag. Whereas on the ground, you're a little bit more flexible, but you don't have access to that strong of tools. And it feels like, these characters, these air acceleration characters like Yoshi, they really get the best of both worlds. And Yoshi especially needs it because I think Yoshi has a very obvious issue in that he struggles to beat shields, right? Like he doesn't have a great grab. He can command grab, but most of the time it's like semi-reactable. His down B is also, reactable, like period. So most of the time, Yoshi can struggle to really punish shields very hard. So what we're seeing from Yoshidora and the other Yoshi players more and more is a focus on, well, oh, you're stuck in shield? Okay, well, now I know where you're going to be positioned. And now that I know your location, I can set up the ideal situation for me. Because generally, the hardest thing, like, it's nice and all if you know situations, but knowing what good situations are doesn't actually matter if your opponent's also moving around. Because, like, you'll be moving into a certain position and they'll be moving into the position they want. And then you both get a position you don't want, which is what you often see at top level where they're like both just kind of like doing this back and forth until one of them gets a little bit of a read, right? Exactly, a little bit of.
This is called neutral.
To be honest,
find me on Meta 5, by the way.
Yeah,
this is neutral, right?
I can learn you how to do this. But once you're stuck in shield, there's only one person doing the back and forth, and that is where Yoshi is so powerful because now he gets that flexibility, he gets to create a situation, and the shielding becomes worse. And I think it's something that Tony said that I totally agree with. Episode like months ago, shielding gets worse the better you get, right? And that's because of that, like the movement. And essentially, and this is like brief description, you got to think about movement as part of your burst range. So people are like, oh, my burst range is my #max range, which is like true, but you can think about your movement as burst range as well, right? So if we think about movement, like a singular position, there's like a bubble of where you can travel in 20 frames. And that's about like the positions that you can create without your opponent being able to react to that. Now, if one of those positions in that bubble is a good position for you, then your opponent's going to want to stop you preemptively because they cannot react to it, right? And that is where Yoshi becomes strong. So what Yoshidora will often do, and I love this, you see this especially when he plays against Proto Benham, because Proto Benham plays very similar in that regard. In that they're both very active, right? They're constantly doing stuff, but they're not like aggressive. And so what you see is that they'll both try to they're both trying to pin the opponent in a position they don't want while trying to create positions they want themselves, which is, like part of like they don't want that's abusing a weakness and a position they want that's like abusing one of your own strengths, right? So we're trying to get our opponent in a position where they're weak and or a position where we're strong, which is, sometimes the same, not always. And so you see a lot of like back and forth movement until someone decides to not respect the opponent. And that is where it often kind of like collapses, right? Like, okay, instead of respecting your good position, I'm going to try to like, contest you for going there, or I'm going to try to counter it specifically, stuff like that. And that is often what it comes down to. And then it snowballs. And a nice thing about Yoshi in terms of snowballing is that one, it's hard to hit combos because he has a frame one escape. Two, it's hard to pressure him because he has a really, really good shield. So, like for Cloud, hitting a background shield, that's progress because now the next one can shield poke. Doesn't work that way against Yoshi, right? So he has a frame one combo escape and he has a frame 6 out of shield option with a shield that's hard to make progress on. And if he hits you, and this is something that I think is super, super undervalued at the moment. He doesn't just get a combo, but he gets advantage state as well. And there's very few characters that get combos and advantage state. Usually it's one or the other, right? So Cloud, advantage state, no combos. Ryu, Ken, Terry, they get a lot of combos, very little advantage state. But a character like Peach, Falco, Yoshi, these are the characters that get advantage state and combos, and that Game Watch as well, right? Which is why we're seeing like an uptick in Game Watch popularity. These characters, they are that much stronger because they don't have to hit the combo because they have a functional advantage state. Yoshi with, like Bam said, both the horizontal and the vertical mobility, just giving him insane burst range. So like you're getting juggled by Yoshi, you have to be wary for a double jump up air. And if it hits, he gets like all the momentum to follow you as well, converts it into a combo. And even if it's a straight hit, that up air kills, right? The back air kills too. So that's the crazy thing, in my opinion, about Yoshi is like he has insane positional flexibility. He has a great guaranteed reward if he gets a combo starter, and he has a good follow-up reward, and he can rely on straight hits. And that combination of moves, well, so the big downside for Yoshi is that he doesn't have a lot of moves because his side B is kind of ass. His neutral B is very specific. His up B is pretty specific. Generally, he just has like pretty specific specials. So he's mostly reliant on normals. But because all of his normals carry threats, he still has a lot of depth to what he can offer in terms of like basically trying to load your mental stack, because like you're playing around jump in fair. Okay, well, that's going to push you back, which means that I can use my mobility. Oh, you're playing around nair. Okay, well, that's going to mean that you're, jumping over it. I can come in with the up air, right? So because he has so many routes that are scary, he can still play a non-straightforward game. And I think that is a quality that is, again, it's pretty rare to have like that combination of qualities in the meta right now. And I think to kind of like as a final point, I think there's also a point to be made that people are not playing properly against Yoshi yet because of how unique his bundle of qualities are. I personally feel like, especially in Japan, because of how the meta evolves, there's a lot of elements about like a lot to Yoshi that is generally just like it's a lot of his weaknesses that are just not exploited because of the way that the meta is developed in Japan. But at the same time, I also think Yoshidora is just like the best Yoshi in the world by far. So it's a little bit of, it's probably a little bit in the middle, right? Where there are definitely like elements of counterplay that are not implemented, but it's also like, okay, the counterplay is going to look different if you're up against the best of the character in the world. So I think Yoshi, TLDR Yoshi is in a very unique position. I think that is kind of the takeaway for me.
Yeah, and even I was thinking about other moves that got changed as well, just from 4 to Ultimate. Another, and I'm just trying to make sure that we hit all the bases because this character got changed a lot. I wouldn't say this character got reworked, but a character that got a ton of, I would honestly just say a ton of buffs, just either coincidentally from game mechanics like jump squat, like how Ramses said, or just like the actual moves itself. So up B bounces on the ground as well in Ultimate. That was not a thing in Smash 4, which
true.
I don't think it's a crazy buff, but it gives you a little bit more chip damage. And then sometimes I've even seen Yoshi's confirm off of the bouncing egg on the ground. So now that I think about it, it's a pretty sizable buff, right? Because it just gives your projectile more range and you can combo off of it. So it's not even just chip damage. You're getting chip damage. It could combo into a full string. It could combo into a confirm. So actually a pretty large buff now that I think about it. Forward tilt.
You know what another funny one is? Okay, so no one knows about this one.
Ooh, this is the secret sauce.
Yoshi was the only character in Smash 4 that could not shield drop.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that. The shield dropping was
Max was talking about the other day.
Yeah.
Oh, did he? That's crazy. Yeah. So actually, the removal of shield dropping is a huge buff for Yoshi because one, he struggled to pressure shields on platforms with shield dropping, and two, now everyone's at his level. Now no one can do it. So that was a huge one as well.
No one gets to play.
Exactly. If I don't have it, you don't have it either.
Yeah. Thanks, Sakurai hooked up Yoshi. Well, you know who really, who really fucked it all up? It was Void at the the demo at the E3
True.
demo. He told the devs like, oh hey, it's kind of hard to shield drop. Like it was easier in Smash 4, but it's a little harder. So you guys might want to make it a little easier. And they're like, oh, really? Yeah. And then they took it out of the game.
I guess it wasn't hard enough. Yeah.
And then Void quit Smash. The damage is done.
Damn. Wait a minute.
But yeah,
dang it, Void.
Wait, because you shield drop and Brawl. I'm trying to think just to give all the listeners just a little shield droplet review. I think you could not shield drop in 64 to my knowledge, right? And then Melee, it was introduced.
Okay, in Melee, it was for sure in Melee, but I don't know about 64.
And was it in Brawl?
See, that's a good question because I don't think I've ever seen someone shield drop in Brawl.
I don't know if it was just really hard or you know what I mean.
I assume it was in there. That's the crazy because it was in Melee and Smash 4, but I've never seen someone shield drop.
I assume it was, but maybe it was really difficult, or maybe people didn't even need to do it because everyone was playing Meta Knight and spamming.
And Smash 64 shield stun was so crazy, like no one shielded anyway. So even if it existed, it probably has no use. So yeah,
I thought it actually didn't. Maybe I'm wrong, but
you know what? In the comments, let us know in the comments. I'm pretty sure there's some Brawl vets in the comments. I know you guys are out there. I know you're listening. Let us know if you can shield drop and Brawl. Oh, dang. I'm so tired. I forgot the show. If you guys are enjoying the content, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Let us know what kind of topics you guys want us to talk about in the comments below. And also let us know if you could shield drop and Brawl because we're a little... don't know about that one. I would assume so, and I think it was just really hard, and the meta didn't really call for it a minute. But in Smash 4, towards the end of the meta, shield dropping became very relevant. Actually, Cosmos started really innovating the meta. I would say Cosmos, Void were like two of the bigger like shield droppers that were really bringing it out into the meta. So shield drop Nair with Corrin was busted, like insanely broken. And towards the end of the meta, I think shield dropping would have been crazy in Smash 4 if Ultimate wasn't announced. Because right when Ultimate got announced, everyone was like, "Ha, fuck this game!" Right? Like I'm not playing against Bano and Cloud anymore. I'm just gonna wait till see me in Ultimate. That was the phrase I always heard. See me in Ultimate where you can't spam air dodge. Like everyone just where you can't spam roll. See me in Ultimate. But another unique tool that Yoshi got buffed a lot. I would say the two moves that got buffed a lot that were pretty troll / not that great were back air and forward tilt. Back air and forward tilt in Smash 4. I wouldn't say they were unusable, but so forward tilt is now a launcher. Especially at early percent, even if you DI away, you still get hit. At mid to late percent, if your DI gets mixed or you're just sleeping on the wheel or you just get hit unexpectedly or maybe hit during initial dash or something like that, you'll get blown up. And it's a launcher now, which is insane to think about. Because before it would just be like damage and that's it. It was a pretty bad move. Back air did not get the stock. It wasn't a kill move. So in this game, it's a kill move. So if you back air out a shield, that or you just get a straight back air, you can just lose your stock, right? And now, because before, if Yoshi was facing backwards at you, you did not have to worry about it. And even the up air was not a backwards hitting move. It was more of just like on top of Yoshi, very similar to like a Fox up air. But now Yoshi's back air hits completely behind Yoshi. So now Yoshi has a lot more kill threat when Yoshi's back is faced towards you. On top of that, tech chasing's big and the drag downs got more consistent. So Yoshi can now do drag down back air into like up tilt, get the late hit up tilt, confirm it into up air, right? So there is so many threats. Rising back air, falling back air, same thing with up air, like rising and falling. All of these things will either set you up into a KO or get the KO outright. So many different threats, because that was, in my opinion, that was the big thing about Yoshi in 4. It was hard for Yoshi to just really get that stock. Another thing to mention as well is when you do the double jump for the armor, once you initiate an aerial, you lose the armor on the startup of the aerial, not when the aerial hits. So that if you've ever seen a Yoshi try to go for an edge guard, and this is why I think, again, you always have to give props to Yoshi players because this character is very hard to pilot, in my opinion. I think at the very surface level, it's like, okay, whatever, they're just mashing Nair, they're just doing whatever stuff. But to succeed with this character at top level, you have to be so precise, because if you go for an edge guard and you double jump Nair and just like a Fox illusion clips you, that could be your stock, right? Now you lose the double jump. And I do think in terms of counterplay, we could be seeing a little bit more. I think one thing that I've seen Void do for, a long time in Brawl / Smash 4, because we had a Yoshi player named Dren in Hawaii, is you can actually footstool the double jump.
Double jump.
Yes, it does have armor, but it doesn't have armor against footstool, and you can grab it, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, armor things you can grab, and you can't armor footstool. So if you see a Yoshi going low, just go for the footstool on the double jump, and it's fairly safe because when you run off double jump back on the stage, that's generally a safe option, right? So we can see that. And another thing that I think is a great topping point is just Yoshi against current Fighter Pass 2 meta, right? So in the previous iteration of Smash 4, Yoshi kind of fell off, especially when DLC came into the fray, right? Not good against sword characters, and one of the best characters in the game was a sword character, and probably like the sword character when we think about Smash. I mean, like when we go back to Melee, obviously it's Marth, right? But when you look at Smash 4 Cloud, like the disjoints compared to even like a Melee Marth was insane. So Yoshi trying to beat that was just the struggle, right? And then Bayonetta also destroyed Yoshi as well. So in this game, I feel like Yoshi is actually one of the characters talked about as one of Steve's worst matchups. I don't know if it actually is, but it has to be up there. I've heard Steve's bitch about Yoshi, right? Because of that frame one out. So they don't really get to deal as much damage. Like, oh, Steve finally got the up tilt. Boom, I'm out of there, right? And then the air mobility to kind of go around these blocks. Yoshi doesn't really have to be grounded, right? But Yoshi, unlike Wario doesn't have to be grounded, but Wario doesn't have the range that Yoshi has in the air, right? So it's a little harder.
It's too stubby in comparison.
Right. So it's a little harder for Wario to really threaten Steve. So I don't know how Yoshi does against some of the other Fighter Pass characters. I would assume Sora is probably the harder one for Yoshi. Maybe Kazuya. I don't know how well Yoshi does against Kazuya. I would assume Yoshi can do pretty decent against Kazuya in a fact that at least Kazuya would probably have to combo Yoshi a little differently because of the floatiness and the frame one out. The combos might be a little bit tighter, and Yoshi can edge guard Kazuya. So just theory crafting wise, I've never seen it at top level. Just theory crafting wise, I think it could be in Yoshi's favor. And then I just think about Sora, and I feel like Sora would do really good against Yoshi because Sora's just constantly covering himself with disjointed hitboxes that can confirm into lots of damage and KOs. And then Sephiroth, I'm not too sure. Oh, Pyra and Myth are probably fuck Yoshi up.
Pyra and Myth are probably horrible. Yeah.
But overall, pretty decent matchups.
Which there's one more DLC character. So I've heard from everyone that Yoshi destroys Min Min, which I can.
Yoshi does destroy Min Min
because you jump in there,
and
it just clanks out the arms, and you have so much airspeed, you just approach her through her arms. Of course, like Min Min can counterplay, and the character's still good. And like a big downside for Yoshi is that because you rely on like air dodge and up to ledge, you can get too framed by the Ram.
But you can just go high.
Overall. Exactly.
Right? Yoshi just double jump, throws egg, and then you're coming down with an egg, and you're like, I don't
exactly.
It reminds me of Wario Bike, where it's like I can always just avoid the 2-frame/ledge trap scenario and just recover high, almost no matter what. If I have a specific resource, whether it being double jump, whether it being the bike, right?
No, for sure. So that matchup is probably awful. I don't know about Sephiroth. It's probably going to rely. I don't think Yoshi can really kill Sephiroth before he has Wing, and it sounds like Wing Sephiroth is really annoying to deal with. But at the same time, that kind of like diagonal blind spot that Min Min has, Sephiroth has a similar one. So yeah, I think Yoshi overall probably a bit down the middle, right? Does decent against Steve, Min Min. Probably Kazuya's probably just like them destroying each other back and forth. But then like the sword characters, Pyra, Mythra, Sora, Sephiroth are probably a little bit on the harder side, which kind of fits Yoshi. And I think that's another thing that allows Yoshi to succeed in the current meta is we've really shifted away from like the mid-range sword characters. I feel like recently, your top 8s are Kazuya, Steve, what's his name, Game & Watch, like all of these characters that are very like close quarters, or even like Asiski playing Samus, more long range. But the mid-range characters, they're still there, right? We see Spargo succeeding. We see Leo play his mid-range characters as well, and they both do extremely well. But there's more and more room for non-sword characters, and I think Yoshi as well just like slots in there very well because, let's be fair, his biggest issue is sword characters, especially those with really good out of shield, like a Cloud. And I don't want to say that Mythra has really good out of shield, but Foresight just shuts down, for example, Yoshi Downer, as far as I know. I don't know if it actually does, but let's put it this way: if Yoshi approaches with a lasting hitbox like a back air or a down air or a nair, you can pretty much just foresight on a guess, on reaction sometimes even, and just like get a hard punish there, right? So lasting hitboxes are just like weaker against her out of shield game. So overall, Yoshi also just like in the current environment just does better and better.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a really good point. And that, like, because for a lot of these characters, right, if you're going to have that close range strength, right, so that mid range is where that's your base of operations, so to speak, right? And a lot of times, because of that, these sword characters, it's like you're trying to get to your base to start things, and it's like you can't even get there, right?
Exactly.
Going back to the point that you made, right, where it's that you have, like, it's not just about your actions in your bubble on where you go, but it's about getting in that position, right? And knowing, like, if you have time position where it's now these actions in that position become unreactable or just exceedingly strong for you. And yeah, a lot of times Yoshi just couldn't even get to that space. So yeah, it's really good to see that for Yoshi. I do feel like even recently I've seen just a couple more shifts in the Pyra Mithra versus Yoshi. I've seen that a bit more, and it seems that it's definitely still bad. Like it's hilarious. Like Pyra's just like lol, like your double jump or anything like that, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like she's definitely the character that comes to mind when you talk about the big sweeping hitbox. Does enough damage that's always going to break through that armor. But people have been getting better at pick and choosing their spots. They've been getting better with dealing when they're in disadvantage versus Aegis. And then at the other side of the coin, people are getting more optimal in terms of punishing them right when they got off stage or setting up corner carries to get them in those kind of situations, etc. Right. So it's cool because like that's something that will always be strong about a character, where it's like, hey, at the end of the day, once I get this hit on you, I can take this obscenely far and then potentially put you in a situation where it doesn't matter what character you are, like you only got a few options. If I guess right here, then you're just bopped, right? And then that, like, it's over. And Yoshi kind of falls on that side. I think Fox is kind of one of those characters too, where it's like you get that hit, and then it's like, here we go, right? You're getting all this damage, you're getting the true combos, and then you have like the soft resets on platforms, maybe, or whatever it may be. But then you get that bears again, and like it doesn't matter who you are. Like once Fox is like, we are all equal under a Fox up air, right? Like that's like the kind of thing, you know what I mean? Like it does it like it's the great equalizer, you know what I mean? So and I think characters like that are really strong. I mean, you see this in some like kind of like setup characters too, going from a Street Fighter analogy, because I know a lot, you know, Evo just happened and it was absolutely godlike. But like, yeah, and absolutely insane tournament. But it's like, yeah, it's like like for example, like Kimberly, right? Because I play Kimberly, and it's like, all right, once I got you in the corner, right? It's like, do you have a reversal or not? That's like one thing, and then it's like, but then beyond that, it's like spray can is there, and everyone's gonna kind of test to deal with it, and it doesn't matter what character you are. It doesn't matter if you're really strong and you just straight up beat that character, like you just beat Kimberly. Because once Kimberly just gets you there, and if they were able to guess right to get you in that situation, then it becomes really rough. And you just have to play her game. And Yoshi has those situations where it's like, okay, I get these particular hits. Now you have to play my game no matter what. It is what it is, which is very powerful when you're dealing with matchups, and also when you're dealing with matchups you quote unquote lose, because it just allows you to still find ways to get there, right? And it still has a very clear like path to success, even if overall you do lose that matchup, which I think is always a great tool to have. You always can find a way. Same thing with Kazuya, right? You can always find a way. If I could, because yeah, I get bodied by these characters, but hey, I found electric.
R.O.B,
like, it doesn't matter.
R.O.B has 30 losing matchups.
yeah, right. Until he hits you, right?
Until he hits
you. Unfortunate if I hit you while regrabbing my gyro, because I don't give a fuck who you are. You are getting blown the fuck back.
That was your stock?
What percent are you?
Oh yeah,
doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
I apologize.
Right. And that's a great transition to another thing I wanted to bring up. Is Yoshi's combo game is very strong. I know earlier in the episode I said above average. I would even go to say one of the stronger characters in the game in terms of combo game, in terms of like the ceiling is really high. So I was working on a guide with Metafy back when I worked with Metafy for Yoshi, and I got to talk with all the lab rats with Yoshi, or not all of them, but like a good amount of them, and some of the players as well for Yoshi. And man, when this character gets optimized, it's fucking crazy. And then I even just because of platforms and the way that Yoshi's double jump, it's very unique. I wouldn't say it's similar to Fox in a way, because Fox just has a very high double jump, so it's more simplistic in a sense. I mean, Yoshi's double jump is really high. There's a little bit of startup and then it ends up really high, right?
It's like a Earthbound double jump, right?
Yes, very similar to an Earthbound double jump, but the Yoshi's single hit up air, just the way it positions you at low to mid percents, you'll hit the like first up air, and then after that you can double jump up air. So like the thing about the Earthbound or like Yoshi's or like Mewtwo's double jump is you can do an aerial, and since it has a lot of startup, you're going to be doing the aerial while rising, right? So there's other games that Yoshi's in where if you do an aerial while double jumping, it'll cancel your double jump, right? So double jump canceling. So that's really good for like shield pressuring. But I believe, I don't know which game it was, if it was Brawl or Smash 4. I think they took double jump canceling out in Brawl. I'm not 100% sure, but for sure.
It was Brawl,
in Brawl.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's when they made it so like while you double jump and do the area, you're like rising up and doing the
you
area.
still rise.
Momentum holds.
Right. So now it's like, okay, now you can do double jump up air. And when you hit that double jump in the beginning of when you hit the up air in the beginning of the double jump, they'll end up to where the ending of your double jump is, and then you can do another up air in that position, right? So it's like, oh, I get 2 up airs in one double jump. Oh, is there a top platform there? Reset, go into another like maybe pair of up airs, or if you got them high enough, you can actually go up air into down air. Down air does over 30% damage, and it can get the KO off the top. So just the vertical combo game is so strong. And then Bam even mentioned earlier that it's not just vertical, he always also has horizontal. It's very funny because I actually played a decent amount of Yoshi in the beginning of Ultimate because he like felt like Floaty Fox. He felt like, oh, okay, like hit my up tilt, get my, up air, like get my spam up air combo. Or if they're DIing in a vertical fashion, I can just exchange, like switch it over to more nair focused and kind of like nair them across the stage, either get a tech chase towards the end or just finish with a nair and put them off stage, go for an edge guard. So yeah, this character has a lot of different options, and just in terms of optimization, if this character is fully optimized combo wise, and we see top players do that, there are setups at like 30% on triplats, no matter the DI, where you just die. There's so many just like optimized combos that this character has that we're not really seeing. We're seeing the more simplistic stuff. And then on top of that, I think the players are using the Yoshi's base mechanics really well. Things like doing double jump in advantage state is something that I saw Meme do a lot, where you double jump up to your opponent, and also Yoshidori does this too. But so you double jump at your opponent. If you're at low percents and you launch them, if they air dodge, you hit them with down air, they die, right? If they swing, what are they swinging you at? Like, what move are they swinging with? Because if it's not strong enough to hit you out of your double jump, you can armor the hit and then reversal them, right? Like then hit an up air, then hit a down air, right?
Yeah.
So these are all, and this is why I think the character is so hard, because you need to understand and know what you can get hit by in what scenarios so you can utilize that double jump armor, because you can't swing the aerial too early, right? You want to use the armor first and then hit the reversal. So there's a lot of scenarios where you can really only jump. It's almost like a true 50-50 depending on what kind of moves your character can swing back at Yoshi, because it has to exceed that the knockback threshold, right? And even for recovering as well, there's so many times where you see Yoshis, they'll double jump and they'll go right over the edge. So there's like a little bit of airspace just so they can squeeze in on an aerial right before they land. And they're hoping that you swing at the double jump with some kind of like grounded option, right? And kind of understanding like, oh, okay, well, my opponent's grounded options here and he's grounded. So is it enough to knock me out of my double jump armor and all that stuff? So seeing how these top players are implementing these very, very unique tools to Yoshi and, succeeding with them is so interesting, because, like Ramses said, this kind of character, you have so many unique options for so many unique scenarios that we're really only going to see this character thrive later on in the meta, because these players have to understand so many scenarios and they're so niche as well, right? So I'm really excited to see not only the counterplay for Yoshi doing things like the footstooling, the double jump, and just playing around these Air-whiff characters, because Right now, Air-whiffing seems very strong because early meta, everyone was like, "Oh, what are my aerials? We run at each other and we throw out our aerials. Bunga bunga," right? That was essentially year one of Ultimate. And now that we're getting,
except for Leo,
right?
Yeah.
Obviously, that's why he was so dominant. He was just ahead of the
Defining the
curve.
meta.
Yeah, he just defined the meta for years and years. So seeing all these like new strategies, especially the Air-whiffing one, I just think it's so cool because we're seeing it in multiple characters, being the Wario, being the Yoshi, and honestly, of the Fighter Pass 2 characters, I know we said it was kind of like a split, but I feel like overall it's a W because you're probably going to run into more Steves and more Kazuya's in bracket nowadays, right? And Sora is like a rare character. Sephiroth more of a rare character. So some of these other characters that
just give Mithra.
Yeah.
Just give her.
I will say Pyra is the biggest L because
Yeah.
I always say that in a Pyra matchup, if Pyra beats you, like if Pyra can just wins the matchup versus your character, you're pretty fucked.
Kind of ending on what you said, Charles, in terms of counterplay. I think an interesting thing about what made Wario so much better early on to me is also like his ground game. Because like Wario down tilt is like low key a fucking crazy move. Like that down tilt is
Did he down tilt?
Okay. It's like yeah, exactly. And he has and his down tilt confirms into a dash attack that kills. So like that's crazy. And he has grab confirms into like huge damage, right? Like because that up air that hits, right? And then even for Jigglypuff, while her ground game isn't great, her fourth throw is crazy. I know it's a meme, right? Like the base mage fourth throw flow chart. But her fourth throw is scary. Yeah. And then like her dash attack, it hits crazy hard too. So like the thing that Wario and Jigglypuff have is they have a lot of threat just like on their grounded movements. And like Yoshi down tilt is good, but like you're gonna be hard pressed to find a Yoshi who has the room to like run up down tilt you. You know what I mean? Like most close quarter characters will fuck you up for doing that. Most walling characters will wall you out for doing that. Most projectile characters will just like snipe something at you for doing that. So like I think the biggest downside for Yoshi is he needs to jump to set his stuff up. And that's something that the other like zigzag characters don't really have. Even Peach, right? She has float, right? It's just such a different dynamic. So for Yoshi, if we want to talk about like counterplay in the future, because I talked about this, I don't want to like say, oh, there's more counterplay, and then not tell you guys what it is. So I think like the biggest bit of counterplay that you can focus on for Yoshi is you want to look at in what position, like where he's on the ground, from what position does he start jumping? Because once you have an idea on where the jump happens, like basically, like when, what, where, right? What is the jump, when and where? If we have the when and where, then we can figure it out. And then you can mostly shut him down by focusing on either being ready for that jump and making sure it doesn't lead in too much, or just shutting it down directly. And I think a lot of people are so focused on like getting their own game plan off or, like blah, 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 that they're not really focusing on shutting down that moment. And I promise you, like, that's the difference. Is like Yoshi's ground game is just that much worse. The biggest thing he has in terms of ground game is his shield, because his outer shield is pretty good, but his dash attack sucks. His dash grab is awful. Like he can run up down to. I think the thing we see more from Yoshi's is run up jab, because jab 1 is actually a pretty good mix up. So like that is the biggest threat. But then like, is that really that bad? You're getting jab, you're still in a mix up. If you get hit by it, you get jab 1-2'd. It's not that big of a deal. So if you are watching at home, you have like a local Yoshi that you struggle with, I really recommend like look at when and where they jump, because usually they have some sort of comfort spot that they kind of move towards, and then they jump, and then they start setting up their game. So really try to focus on figuring that out.
Bam?
Oh, yeah, what's
there he is.
Dang,
dude.
So any closing thoughts on Yoshi for yourself, Bam?
I mean, yeah, I would say straight up the character is fun to watch in this current meta, and like you guys already said, the character is definitely going to be a long-term character, right? That's where a lot of these characters are slowly rising up. Advantage characters combo game is pretty wild, and it's fun to watch. So I do hope that we have more Yoshis kind of continuing to move forward and seeing how they can push the limits of these characters. It's been awesome to see the development with a lot of aerial based characters just all over, right? Like just obviously we saw HBox at Evo, and just even seeing what he's been able to accomplish, right, in base mage, and as like, and obviously Gluto just continuing to just be so damn strong, right? It's been really nice to see these characters really flourish in a way, and in a way that is, I would say most of the time, it seems like most people usually hate floaty characters, right? And they despise playing them, and like you said, they usually in like maybe playing defensively and all this kind of stuff, but they found a way to be have like really cool neutral, and they've been able to find a way where they are like, they're putting on that damage, right? They're doing some cool combos, and it's like not overbearing, right? So it's like refreshing to see. You optimize Yoshi may get to a point where it's overbearing, so we'll see where that goes. But for where we're at right now, it's been really exciting to watch that development, especially since we, like Ramsey already like talked about, we were, we kind of start Ultimate in a time where it's like, if you ain't a swordy, man, you get clapped, baby. It's mid-range, mid-range all day, man. You're all trash, right? Take this sword. You want me to play neutral? I don't care. Like, let me swing at you. So it's nice to see how the meta transforms over time, and I'm just eager to see what an end game Yoshi really looks like.
All right, awesome. So that's going to be it for this episode of Coach's Corner. I hope you guys enjoyed the talk about Yoshi in the current meta. Make sure to like and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening on Spotify, make sure to give us a rating. And of course, leave some comments down below how you felt about the episode, how you feel about Yoshi, how you feel about Yoshi in the current meta. And until next time, class dismissed.